Welcome to RE/MAX of Boulder podcast. Today we have Todd Ullrich. Todd is a property manager here. He partners with RE/MAX of Boulder, and his company name is called PG Rentals. Todd manages about 250 units, so we love to have Todd on the show because he brings a wealth of wisdom and knowledge and information about the rental market. So today we're going to be talking about how the rental market did, and I always say that this is the hot time of year for being an owner to rent in Boulder because of all the students that come back. So Todd, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dwayne.
So along those lines, the rental market, how did student turnover season go this year?
Another busy one. It was very fast-paced, but they're all settled in and back to school.
Okay, I've always been amazed at property managers in Boulder because you're taking care of 250. Out of those 250, how many of them do you think turn over within like August 15th, within that week period? Is it the majority of them?
It's probably just under half.
Under half.
Yeah.
So still that's over 125 units that you have to get painted, cleaned up, and ready to turn over. How do you deal with that? Does that make you crazy?
Yes, you have to be crazy to do it. We have good teams, and they're polished professionals, and we've been doing it for a long time.
Okay. Now, how tough was it for kids to find a place to rent to go to school in Boulder this year? Was the vacancy rate pretty low?
It has been. For the last few years anyway, we've seen it hover right around 1%. For students, it's an even tighter market because it's not the entire town. It is limited to certain sections of town, so we see it start very early, as much as 8 months in advance of the start of the lease.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. What is the best time for, if kids need a place for like August 15th of the next school year? 8 months puts us pretty darn early in the year, so.
It does begin.
March-ish or so, or
actually,
before that?
well before that, we start seeing interest around Thanksgiving for
the next August.
the next August.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
So, on the purchase side of things, we see a lot of investors look to purchase this time of year, especially if they are student rentals, so that they can catch that rush as it begins. It really ramps up over the first of the year, and by about the first week of February, we're about 80% leased for the following August.
Amazing. And how does the timing work as far as like I know the university does a housing fair or two. Do you know what months they do those housing fairs to share the available properties with the kids?
They do. They keep moving it back just a little each year. This past year, it was the last week of January and then the first week of March. To be honest, they missed a lot of it because I'd say better than half of the student rentals in town were already spoken for.
Wow.
So it is helpful, and it's good to be able to get the properties out in front of a lot of students. But we're seeing the demand start so much earlier, especially with the internet and social media.
So low vacancy rate. Like when you drive around town, you do see a lot of new buildings. Has that eased some of the pressure as far as supply and demand, or is that a different market than what the students are typically renting?
A little bit different market. It's different parts of town. The Hill has not had that much in the way of development. There have been a few things here and there, but overall has not impacted the student rental segment of town at all.
Okay. And what are a couple key points that if you're a parent getting ready for your student to come to see you, as far as like length of leases, when they typically expire, what might be expected for deposits and that type of thing? Any things that's kind of typical of what's out there that a parent should expect when they look for a place in Boulder?
Yes. Boulder, like any market, has its traditional and kind of standard procedures. A lot of them are definitely centered around the lease term, which typically runs from summer to summer. We see about 80% of the leases here in Boulder begin and end in August, and that has mostly to do with when school year starts, university and K through 12 levels.
Right.
So
life is centered around the university.
It is, and school in general.
School.
People
Okay.
want to be moved before
Right.
school starts, no matter what age their kids are. But of course, with the university, they have to be in place in time
Right.
for school to start. We do see mostly 12-month leases here. There was a small segment of the rental population or the investment properties that would do 9-month leases. The trick was they were charging 12 months worth of lease in a 9-month period.
Oh, okay.
So they're still paying the same amount, but it's a shorter lease because some kids do want to go home for the summer. With everything that goes on in Boulder, there is no vacancy even in the summertime here. So a lot of the students will just sublet over the summer, but most leases are 12-month.
Okay. So as a student now, and you just moved in, you should actually kind of start thinking ahead to the next year already.
Yeah, and we do see it, we send a lot of notice out to our tenants about the following year, and if they're interested, here's what our portfolio looks like and what's available. And that does get a lot of discussion going with friends and roommates, and it's true with a lot of the property managers around here that they will start it pretty early. So
Right.
by a little after Thanksgiving, a little before Christmas, the rush is ramped up pretty good.
Do you ever see say you have 4 kids in a zone that allows 4 kids in a property where maybe 2 graduate, and then, so 2 move on, and then move in 2, and they kind of just rotate on through? Does that happen quite a bit?
Quite a bit, yeah. We see our retention rate, I think, this year was just over 45%, but that doesn't include the partial turnovers like you were alluding to. So we do have a number of properties where groups will break up or someone will graduate and then they'll bring in a new roommate.
Okay, with the rental market so tight, one of the things I wanted to discuss today is the parent maybe watching this video that's considering buying a condo for their child to live in at their time at CU. What's the best time typically in that regard to get a place?
Well, I say summer is always the busiest. There's just seems to be the most demand. There's quite a bit on the market at that time as well. There's a lot of turnover, especially when someone has owned a property for their kid to live in while they're at school. And so there's a group each year that graduates and then they sell.
Right.
But it's very, very busy as well. So we see a lot of activity in the fall when it comes to student investments.
Okay.
And it also benefits the investor to have a little bit of leeway in the event that they're buying something that is larger than just a 1-bedroom. So if their kid is going to have roommates, they're going to need a little bit of time to find those roommates and maybe even do some improvements to the property. So starting in the fall is a really good time because then you're still catching the wave of demand.
So an investor thinking of the home for their college student, if they bought something in the fall, it might actually be rented until August.
Correct.
And they would actually need it, so they would have it in place, leave the lease in place, as they would have to anyway.
Correct.
And then when those kids move out, they would be able to move in.
That's correct. And they'll have enough time to either see if any of the kids are staying or if they need to find new roommates or tenants for the property.
Okay, well, it seems like too, like you mentioned graduation, so if graduation is in May, I've seen a bit of a rush of student properties come on the market maybe about 2 months before that May date. So that could be a good time for inventory. The only thing is, from the buying side on the parents, is that if you buy a place in May, then you might have it empty for a couple months before the student moves in, so there's that little bit of lag time. But
That potential's
okay.
there.
Right, do you notice whether the students prefer like single family where they gotta mow lawns but they can have a dog type thing, or do they prefer the attached dwelling units like condos and the townhomes?
It really does run the gamut. Each year we do track where we see the most demand, and this year it was 4-bedroom places, whether it was condos or single-family homes. There were larger groups that wanted to live together. In years past, it's been 2 and 3 bedrooms, which does push it more into the condo realm, especially on the 2-bedroom side. So it does move around a little bit each year, but there's so little of it, everything rents.
Right. Now, one thing that, in the city of Boulder, there are some occupancy rules. Only 3 unrelated people in a low-density zone and 4 in a higher-density zone. Has there been any hints from the city of Boulder about maybe relaxing some of those, or are we status quo for the years ahead as far as being able to let more kids live together legally to keep costs down?
The discussions I've heard were about trying to relax some of those restrictions. There's actually an article in today's Daily Camera that sounds like the city's going in the other direction. They're looking to enforce it and be a little more stringent about it for various reasons, but it's still up in the air. There's a couple of ordinances that have been proposed. So as it stands right now, it's status quo.
Okay, so hard to say whether that's all good or bad. There's obviously 2 sides to every story. I mean, we need the increased density to let more people there, but increased density brings other problems.
Sure.
Too much stuff, dogs, people, cars, all that type of stuff.
Exactly.
So, right, any other thoughts on the student rental year in perspective this year compared to other years?
I would just say we are seeing vacancy rates stay fairly steady, hovering right around 1%. Last year we saw an increase in rent on average of just under 10%, and we're projecting a 15+% increase in rents for next year.
Basically just supply and demand. There hasn't been any new units close to school built, so it's
That's
getting
right.
tight.
That's
So,
right.
Hey, Todd, thank you for being here today and sharing your ideas. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Wayne.
RE/MAX Boulder Video Podcast signing off. Dwayne Duggan.